This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. It's great to see you. It's boiling hot outside. It's nice and cool in here. This is our final week in the three-part series on how we know the Jews are right. Before we get started, today's Lunch and Learn is being sponsored by Lee and Lillian Shostak in honor of the neshama of Rabbi Zev Shostak, whose yahrzeit is the first of which is this Shabbos. His neshama should have an aliyah. It is also in the memory of the yahrzeit of Mrs. Lefkowitz, Tzipora Bas Chaim, whose yahrzeit is today, sponsored by Chaya Youngworth. Okay, now, let's just give a quick recap of what we've covered in the last 2 weeks. We've discussed the idea that history will show, conclusively prove, that number one, whoever wrote the Torah had not only knowledge over the future of history, but also control over the future of history. It will also show that the Jewish people are the chosen people, as spoken about in the Torah. The Torah, of all the roughly 5,000 different major religions that have been around in human history, is the only one whose holy book makes extraordinarily specific predictions about what will happen in this world. All the other holy books tell you what will happen in Kingdom Come, a place that nobody can ever come back from to confirm or deny. So it's very easy to make all kinds of promises of what happens in the world to come when no one's ever able to confirm or deny. But the Torah is the only book, again, the only book of all the religious books that tells you exactly what's going to happen. It makes extraordinary claims that often work against each other, and they've all come true. The last 2 weeks we've covered the first 4. We've discussed the idea of an eternal nation. We've discussed that the Jewish people have been here since Abraham, and we've been doing exactly, not only are we here, the children of Abraham, but we're still doing exactly what God said we would be doing, we're just speaking His words. Number 2, the idea of exile. Most nations are not exiled. Exile does not play any beneficial role to the person in power. You just lose you have an empty land instead of a land that's productive and paying tribute or rent, so to speak. So exile is very rare throughout history, yet we are the only nation in the history of mankind who was exiled twice, as the Torah predicted. Exile number 1 in Leviticus, exile number 2 in Deuteronomy. Number 3, we talked about the idea of the incredible, intense hatred against the Jewish people. You would think if we'd be exiled and we would have no land, how would we exist? How would we survive? Maybe if we had a lot of love and support from the people around us, but no, the Torah says that we're going to be hated. And indeed, the hatred of the Jew and the violence perpetrated against us, as we spoke about last week, has been more significant than any other form of hatred or violence on 4 metrics: its universality, its irrationality, its longevity, and its intensity. See last week's class for more on that. Oh, wait, I thank you for coming out here. I didn't thank the amazing folk at Torah Anytime, the amazing staff at Yeshiva Beth Yehuda and Partners Detroit for setting up this beautiful Lunch and Learn and ordering all the amazing food. And I want to thank the great folk over at Torah Anytime. It's an app, it's a website, and it's filled with incredible Torah knowledge. Go on down, check it out, and fill yourself with incredible Torah knowledge. Now, the last one we said is maybe if we'd just be this ginormous nation, we would be so big that despite all the oppression and the hatred and the murder and the violence, they would not be able to finish us off. But no, we have always been a tiny nation. We've never experienced a population explosion as predicted in the Torah. So those were the 4 we've covered until now. Eternal nation, twice exiled, hatred and violence, and small nation. But I told you guys we're going to get to the good stuff this week. And here we are, ladies and gentlemen. The same book that said all those things said that the Jewish people are going to be an incredible light unto the nations. And what we're going to see is that this tiny group of people known as the Jews have had an incredibly profound impact on human history. Now, we have to really understand a very important rule, and I'm going to call it the give the man the tools for the job he has rule. Okay? So let's give examples. If I were to ask you to break up the concrete in my driveway, because I want a new driveway, and then I were to furnish you with a laptop, it wouldn't work really well. If I were to tell you that I want you to clean my teeth, and I gave you a jackhammer, it wouldn't work really, really well. And if I told you I wanted you to write me an email, and I gave you a dentist polishing tool, it wouldn't work really well. So if you give someone a job, you've got to give them the tools to be able to carry out that job. If God gave the Jewish people the job to be a light unto the nations, He's got to give us the tool to carry that out. Let's see the source inside first, just to understand what we're talking about. If you want to see your source sheet, it's going to be on source number 9. Okay, Genesis 12, verses 2 and 3. God says to Abraham, I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great. You shall become a blessing, and I will bless those who bless you and curse those who curse you. And here are the key words. Through you shall all the communities of the earth be blessed. You are going to bring incredible benefit to all the communities of the earth. Another language similar to this, found in Isaiah 42, verse 6. Ani Hashem krasicha b'tzedek, I, the Lord, have called you in righteousness. V'achazek biyadcha, and I'm going to hold your hand. Ve'etzorecha, and I'm going to treasure you and keep you. Ve'etnecha lebris am la'ar goyim, and I will establish you as a covenant of the people for a light unto the nations. God says you will be a light unto the nations. Okay. And one more important source, Exodus 19, 5, 6. This was God's conversation with the Jewish people when offering them at Mount Sinai the opportunity to seal the deal and create this eternal covenant, which we accepted enthusiastically and full-throatedly, and that is the following. Va'ata now im shamoa tishmu b'koli, if you will hear my voice, u'shmartem es brisi, and you will keep my covenant. Ve'yisem li segula mikol ha'amim, you will be my special treasure among all the nations. Ki li kol ha'aretz, for the whole world is mine. Va'atem tiyu li mamleches kohanim v'goy kadosh, and you will be a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. Okay, so what this means is that God is saying, I'm going to make you into a kingdom of priests. All your people will be priests. Priests are the people who try to encourage people to do the right thing, right? Priests are the people who try to, ministers and priests are the ones who try to encourage people to live by the godly way. One last source that I don't have in here, but there's a source in the book, I don't remember which book it is, but it's one of the books of the prophets, where God says, Atem Edai Ne'um Hashem, you are my witnesses, saith the Lord, or says the Lord. Okay, so let's try to understand what job God is giving us. The ultimate job that God is giving us is to be those who show the world what the godly way is. What is the job of a witness? A witness stands in the courtroom. The people who are on the jury, they were not there when the murder occurred. But the witness was, and he tries to paint the picture for the jury of what occurred. We are the witnesses of God. We stood at Mount Sinai and saw God. We are the only nation who saw God. We are the only nation that ever made a claim that our entire nation saw God. Every other religion has like one guy or two guys who spoke to God. We say our entire nation stood at the foot of Sinai and saw God as He spoke to us. We all saw the voice of God emanating from the clouds. And therefore our job is to show the whole world what a godly people look like. We're supposed to be a kingdom of ministers. We're supposed to be a nation that shows the entire world what it means to live a godly life. And if God gives us that incredible role, we make up less than 0.2% of the world, yet God's job for us is show the world what godliness looks like. They weren't there. They didn't see godliness. You did. Show them. Testify to them. Show them what a godly people looks like. So our job that God really has for us is to be a light unto the nations. Illuminate the nations of the world with what God is all about. Now, if you give somebody a job, you got to give them the tools. If you want to light up a room, you have a little light switch over there and you turn it on. If you want to light up a stadium, if you go to Comerica Park for their game, if they have a game tonight, right, the Tigers. Okay, there we go. But at least their lighting system should be doing good, right? If you go to Comerica Park, they've got these massive banks of lights. And when they flip on those lights, the entire stadium is filled with such incredible light that it looks like it's daytime. We talk to each other, we see each other, no one's squinting their eyes. It looks like daylight inside the stadium. We're supposed to light up the whole world, and we're not even 0.2% of the world. If you go to the stadium at Comerica Park, you think they have a regular plug that they plug in? No. They have massive power on site. They have special power. If the whole world is running on 110, the stadium is probably running on 880 or 4, whatever the wattage, the voltage is, but it's much, much higher voltage because they've got to carry so much electricity to light up the world. God says, I want to give you a job. What's your job? Light up the world. Spiritually inspire the whole world. Bring the light of godliness to the whole world. If I give you a job, I got to give you the tools. What does God give us? God gives us extra electricity, so to speak. Enormous, enormous electric power. 880, shall we call it. And have we done that? Yes, we have, as we'll see in a moment. But here's the really important key. What happens if a Jew comes along and says, you know what, I'm not so interested in lighting up the world spiritually. I'd rather study medicine. Well, they're plugging in an 880. They're probably going to have enormous success in medicine too, because they have more wattage. If they say, I don't want to light up the world with spirituality, I want to make money, they'll probably be really good at it because they're running on 880s. You understand what I'm saying? So you are given this 880 to plug in and spiritually light up the world. And we will see that we have indeed done that. However, when we don't want to do that and we want to use the gifts, the extra wattage that God gave us for whatever else we want to study, we will find tremendous success. And we'll see that too. Okay. So what exactly have the Jews done to light up the world? Have we been able to do that? So for starters, let's talk with the idea of monotheism. Right? The Jews, Abraham, he was the original monotheist. As a matter of fact, he was called Avram Ivri. Abraham, the other one. So from the other side, the whole world was polytheistic. And he was preaching there's only one God. Today, about half the world believes that there's one God. Where did they get it from? The Jews. Okay. That's pretty impressive in terms of lighting up the world and showing them the reality of God. Let's go through a number of other important precepts. The idea that we are all the children of God. And that all people have inalienable rights endowed to them by their Creator. If you recognize those words, it's because they come from our Constitution. And our Constitution was written by people who were devout Christians. And the Christian beliefs come directly from the Jewish beliefs. They used to call them Judeo-Christian beliefs. I taught high school for many years. And we used to teach the tenets of Christianity. Because that was part of our class on religions when I taught global history. So here are some of the tenets of Christianity. Love thy neighbor like thyself. That sounds weird. I think I know that one. And I've never read the New Testament in full. So, oh, right, because it comes from our book. Oh, right. Okay, there we go. Okay, that's a good one. Judeo-Christian beliefs, right? The value of a human life. Today, these things are so simple. Like, of course a human life is valuable. Well, not if you went back in time to Greece. The great bedrock of Western civilization. Greece. With Plato and Aristotle and Socrates. You know what they were doing in Greece? They would kill any child that was born with any deformity. A cleft lip, a stunted arm, any kind of deformity, they would immediately just kill. Not only that, just to understand that in Greek society, the most exalted form of love was male-male love. Women were often seen as necessary because they make babies, but we don't really need them for much else. And that's why they practice something called female infanticide, which means you kill babies for the horrible crime of being born female. How do we know this? Well, first of all, we can see the censuses of certain towns in Greece, where the male to female ratio was 6-1. That doesn't happen naturally. It was because they were systematically murdering women just for being born women, the undesired gender. We even have an incredible letter. We have this letter. It's from a Greek merchant who's traveling abroad to do business. And he writes back to his wife very lovingly, I know that you're pregnant. Make sure that you're eating more. You're eating for two right now. We've got to make sure you're able to bring a healthy baby into the world, and so on and so forth. And then he says, when the baby's born, if it's a girl, please discard of it. If it's a boy, make sure that you eat more honey in your diet and more this, so you could have more milk to provide for the child. But like the cavalier language, if it's born a female, please discard of it. Now, what is discarding? How would they discard their babies in Greece, this incredible bedrock of Western civilization? How would they discard babies? Oh, there was a whole set of ways. Often, the mother who just carried that child for 9 months would literally take a pillow and just put it over the baby's face until the baby stopped breathing. Other ways, they would leave them out to what was called exposure. Exposure means you take a little drive through the countryside and you fling the baby out of the window. Okay? They would also throw children down the well. Right? Or they would just put them, you can't believe this stuff, they would pot them. They would put them in a pot. We can't imagine this, but this was life in Greece. This is life before Judeo-Christian beliefs, or the Judaic belief in the value of every human life, came to Greece. And remind you that Greece is the cradle of our Western philosophy and civilization. You can even find in the writings of Seneca, the great Roman philosopher, where he talks about how discarding a child because it was born with some kind of deformity, that's not wrong. That's choosing that which is valuable over that which is valueless. Just to understand the world that came before the Jewish values came. The very idea that today we in the world understand just instinctively that human life is valuable, that is a new thing. That's an entirely new invention. And that was brought about by the Jewish people. And that is a belief that is held by most of the world today. That's another example of Jewish beliefs that have lit up the whole world. The idea of being committed to truth and justice and fair trials sounds basic, right? Not basic. That's not the way the world ran for thousands of years. It was might equals right. I'll take what I can because I can. Next, the idea of seeking peace and not war. Right? Every single time they have a beauty contest, what's the thing that you'd like to work for? World peace. World peace wasn't a goal. Conquest was a goal. Right? The idea that peace is better than war. No. Back in the day, war was better than peace. That's how you take over other countries. That's how you expand your empire. Alexander the Great and the Persians and the Babylonians. Every single one of these people, they were all running on the war is the way to expand. War is the way to grow. As a matter of fact, when the world decided we had enough with war, and that was after World War II, after 60, 70 million people died, they finally decided to create this extraordinarily corrupt, horrific organization called the United Nations, which somehow is supposed to be pro-peace, but is the most warmongering, horrific institution that they should just slice it off of Manhattan, because it's on the east side of Manhattan. They should just slice it off and set it off into the ocean and let it drift. But when they created the UN, and the purpose of the UN, the stated purpose of the UN was to create world peace, they were trying to find a nice little statement to put on the cornerstone of the UN. And where do they seek their inspiration from? From Isaiah. Isaiah the prophet wrote, "They shall beat their swords into plowshares and spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not raise the sword against nation, and they shall no longer learn war." When the world is seeking the source of the ideal of peace, they find it in the Jewish tradition. We taught that the hero should not be the warrior, but the scholar. The good person, not who could kill the most people. The first form of women's rights to property can be found in our Torah. We read it last week's Parsha, when Bnot Slavcha, the daughters of Slavcha, come and say, "We would like our portion in the land," and God says, "You got it." The first form of women's rights found in the Torah. The first form of universal education is in Israel when Rabbi Yoshua ben Gamla created a network of schools for people who could not afford to teach their children. The very first form of universal free education found in our Torah. So the bottom line is we have lit up the world. We have been a light unto the nations. We have shaped the way the nations of the world look at reality and changed it to bring it much, much more in line with godly values. However, like I said before, we are given this extra energy because God gave us this incredible job. He also gave us incredible extra energy, and therefore wherever we apply it, we will see success. Which is why you see Jewish success that is way out of proportion to any other nation in almost every area of life. Let's take American society today. For starters, you talk about medicine, right? The first heart transplant, the discovery of antibiotics, right? We talk about the medical revolutions coming from Israel, okay? When you talk about, let's talk for a moment, let's talk about culture here in America. So what drives culture? Hollywood. Who started Hollywood? The Jews. And let's look at the biggest players in the Hollywood scene today. You've got MGM. What does MGM stand for? Metro, which is a word. Goldwyn, Meyer, both of them Jews. SKG, the little guy sitting with the little fishing rod on the top of the moon. What does SKG stand for? Spielberg, Jew. Katzenberg, Jew. Geffen, Jew. You had the Weinstein brothers, Olav Shalom, thank God they're gone, but they were massive players in this field. So that's in terms of culture. You want to talk fashion? Let's talk fashion. Who is the biggest fashion designer in the United States of America? Ralph Lauren, my friends. Ralph Lauren is by far the one who makes the most money. He's got all these different brands. There's many, many different brands of Ralph Lauren. There's Purple Label, there's Black Label, there's Polo, there's Chaps, there's all these labels. He's by far the one who grosses the most money in fashion America. What is Ralph Lauren's real name? Raphael Lifshitz. I think he's a Jew. But then let's move on from there. Donna Karan, Jew. Calvin Klein, Jew. Eli Tahari, Jew. Michael Levy, Jew. We can go on and on and on. Okay? Tommy Hilfiger, not a Jew, right? Okay. So what we see is that literally dominating in America in terms of fashion. Okay, there we go. Let's talk about, hold on a second. Comedians. That's an easy one, but we pretty much invented the genre of comedy here in America. Jackie Mason, you're going back to the old times, but still, you got Adam Sandler and V'chahina. But let's go, Larry David, exactly, Jerry Seinfeld, right? Okay, let's go with finance. Alrighty, let's go through this. We got Ben Bernanke. We got, what was the guy before him? Janet Yellen. And who was before Ben Bernanke?
Alan Greenspan.
Alan Greenspan, that's what I'm looking for. There we go. Alan Greenspan, right? For his very, very long tenure, you got Ben Bernanke, you got Janet Yellen, right? You've got the most successful hedge fund ever, SAC Capital, started by a guy named Cohn. Steve Cohn. You've got Goldman Sachs, Jew and Jew. You got the Lehman Brothers, Olav Shalom, Jews, right? I mean, it's kind of wild. It's kind of wild. You look today at the people who started some of the biggest companies, right? Mark Zuckerberg, Jew. You've got the people who started Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, both Jews, right? Bill Gates, not a Jew. But how about Steve Ballmer? How about Paul Allen? How about, the guy who's... Larry Ellison, right, from Oracle. We could go on all day long. Larry Summers. Okay, let's switch gears. Let's go. Which medicine we did already, right? We like almost so many of the biggest discoveries. Einstein, there we go. Let's go with this. This is a wild stat. The Wall Street Journal, at the end of 1999, wanted to do a look back at the entire 20th century, from the year 1900 to the year 1999. And they did a 3-part series on the 3 people that had the greatest effect on the entire world for 100 years. And who did they come up with? They came up with 3 people. Sigmund Freud, Jew. Albert Einstein, Jew. And Karl Marx, unfortunately, Jew. Okay, what are the odds that one people that makes up less than 20% of 1% of the world population has all 3 of the top spots that affected the entire global history for 100 years? Yeah. There we go. Okay. Jews, of course, have received over 1/6 of all Nobel Peace Prizes. So not Peace Prizes. We don't get the peace ones often, but Nobel Prizes. Now, ironically, we're actually very underrepresented in many areas of the Nobel Prizes, but our accomplishments in science and in economics and in technology overshadow, and we still have 1/6 of all Nobel Prizes. We make up less than 20% of 1% of the world, and we have more than 1/6 of all Nobel Prizes. Music. Think about Alan Gershwin and what was Gershwin's name? George Gershwin, and I mean the craziest thing is the whole holiday music, the whole Xmas music, entire industry was done by Jews. It's unbelievable, right? It's unbelievable. Okay. Now, Jews were always at the forefront of pushing for social change, for better and for worse. Many of the top leaders of the Russian Revolution, right, were the ones who brought communism to the world. Trotsky and who else? Not Lenin. Trotsky and not Stalin or Lenin, thankfully. Was Lenin Jewish? I don't think so. No. I can't remember right now, but Trotsky, of course, would have been one of the most famous ones. But there's more. When America was going through a great upheaval in the 60s and 70s, right, this whole push for change on campuses and civil rights movement, they did a study and they were trying to figure out where are the campuses that are most likely to be pushing most significantly for social change in America, to bring more rights to women and minorities. And they literally found, this was the study's finding, they found that the places that had here we go, it was a study called by the American Council of Education, and they wrote, the best single predictor of campus protest was the presence of a substantial number of students from the Jewish background. The 2 most famous activists in the civil rights movement were Abbie Hoffman and Jerry Rubin. Guess which nation they came from? 40% of all Peace Corps volunteers are Jewish. Okay, now, Jews in the USA have the highest income of any ethnic group, although that might actually have changed. It might now be Nigerians, which is a very, very small ethnic group. But it used to be definitely the Jewish people, 72% above average, which was about 40% higher than the Japanese, which was the next group. How do we understand this? We understand this because, like I said before, if you give somebody a job, you got to give them the tools. God gave the Jewish people a job. The tools they were supposed to use for that was this 880 power, this enormous amount of power, this ability to just spin up incredible success. We were supposed to use it to bring morality to the world. Unfortunately, it also has been used to bring immorality to the world. So people like Karl Marx was a Jew, and look how much pain and suffering and devastation that brought to the world. Look at today, unfortunately. So many of the people at the forefront of pushing ideologies that are just hurtful to children, hurtful to women, if you know what I'm talking about, are also Jewish. Now here's a very sensitive thing, and I want to just say this very, very delicately. When Jacob was given the blessings by his father, Esau came in, if you remember, and he was very upset. And finally, he begs his father, "Can't you give me a blessing?" And finally, Isaac says, "Okay, fine. I will give you a blessing. Behold," and this is in Genesis, chapter 27, verse 39. "So Isaac, his father, answered and said to him, Behold, of the fatness of the earth shall be your dwelling, and of the dew of the heavens from above. By your sword you shall live, but your brother you shall serve. But your brother Jacob you shall serve. Yet it shall be that when you are aggrieved, you may cast off his yoke from upon your neck." What does that mean, when you are aggrieved? Rashi and pretty much all the commentators say, when Jacob's blessings are not being used as they were intended. I did give the blessings to Jacob. But when Jacob's blessings are not being used as intended, you have the right to be aggrieved. It's not fair that Jacob got the blessings, and you will be able to cast off his yoke. If you look at Jewish history, we've done a lot of remarkable, amazing things. But unfortunately today, many, many Jews are using that 880 power to advance ideologies or positions that can be very hurtful. I'll give you a few examples. Okay? If you're a parent in Middle America who's very, very deeply hurt by the fact that in your school there are books being given to your third grader that are very graphic and sexual in nature and very highly inappropriate, and you are going to try to do what you can to protest against it, the person at the top of one of the biggest teachers' unions is going to be Randy Weingarten, who's pushing for all this stuff. You might feel like it's not fair. Why is this person holding me back? If you have a child who died of fentanyl overdose in America, and you want to understand, how did all this fentanyl get into America? And you see that the George Soros Foundation, the Open Border Society, which is literally what it's called, pushed and donated and gave tons of money. And believe it or not, the Department of Homeland Security was headed by a guy named Alejandro Mayorkas, which does not sound like a Jewish name. But he's actually Jewish, and he's the one getting on the TV and saying, "Our border is secure, there's no problem, but your child died of a fentanyl overdose." You might be aggrieved. You might feel like, I don't understand how these people have this power, but they're using it in a way that's hurting me. And I don't think this is what God intended for them to do. And it shall be, when you are aggrieved, that you will cast off the yoke. So we have to understand, it's easy to just scream anti-Semitism all the time. But sometimes we need to take a look at ourselves and say, we do have incredible gifts and an enormous amount of power. And as Spider-Man told us, with great power comes great responsibility. And maybe some of us are using that power in a way that's really hurtful. If you live in a city where the DA was elected the DA was elected, and he's a sort of a George Soros-backed candidate, because he figured out that I can't spend enough money to get mayoral elections easily overturned, but I can get DAs. And that DA comes in and opens up a policy where criminals are being let off as soon as they come in, and criminals are sometimes being arrested 2-3 times in the same 48 hours, and they're vandalizing your neighborhood, or maybe, God forbid, they hurt somebody in your family or whatever it is. You might be really hurt, and you're like, I don't understand. How do these people have so much power? And you would not be 100% wrong for asking that question. And our Torah says, if you used, God says, Jacob is given the blessings over Esau. God gave us enormous, enormous abilities, but he gave it to us to light up the nations, not to use it in ways that could hurt people. And if we do, we have to be accountable. Okay. I just want to, I think it's important for us to understand this. Now, so amazingly, we said, this nation has had the innovations in medicine, in chemistry, in science, in literally every field that have been brought by the Jewish nations. Through you have the communities of the earth be blessed. As a matter of fact, if you look at the nations that are ascendant, you will always find a major presence of Jews in that nation. Spain was at the top of the world until they kicked out the Jews in 1492. They had a tremendous Jewish population there. Most of the Jews ended up moving to Holland. Holland became the center of world commerce and trade for 200 years. England then finally welcomed in the Jews. And England became supremely powerful and had a global reach. Then the Jews moved to America, and America became the most powerful country in the world. You literally can see that Jews are able to bring incredible blessing to wherever they are. So this is a prediction made in the Torah that is very explicit and has indeed come true, despite defying numbers the Startup Nation, read the Startup Nation. Read about what Israel produces for the world in terms of innovation. And the numbers are staggering. Israel is producing more innovation for the world than all of Europe combined by a far shot. Okay, that's why every company in America, every large company, has massive campuses in Israel. NVIDIA just announced they're building a ginormous campus in Israel. Apple is there, Microsoft is there, Google is there, everyone is there. Because the innovation coming out of Israel, I was once actually on the security line at Ben Gurion with a woman, and we got into a conversation. She was a big executive. I forgot, I think it was Microsoft. And she was telling me, like, part of the trouble they have is that the Israelis, they innovate so fast and they create these brilliant products, but they're so ahead of themselves that they don't even have the ability to then go reverse engineer it into the old, outdated systems that the rest of the world is still using. So she came to Israel to say, guys, put the brakes on. You're innovating too fast. You're bringing too much. We got to slow you down. Okay, so that is number 5, a light into the nations. Number 6. Number 6 is what we call a chameleon land. I want to read to you a few different verses, okay, that describe the land of Israel. Source number 10, Deuteronomy 8, chapter 8, verses 7 through 10. Your God is bringing you to a good land, a land with flowing streams and underground springs gushing out in valley and mountain. It's a land of wheat, barley, figs, and pomegranates, a land of oil, olives, and honey dates. It is a land where you will not eat your bread and rations, and you will not lack anything, a land whose stones are iron, and from whose mountains you will quarry copper. When you eat and are satisfied, you must therefore bless your God for the good land that he has given you. Sounds like an amazing place. I'll give you another verse. Exodus 3:8. I have come down to rescue them from Egypt's power. I will bring them out of that land to a good, spacious land, to a land flowing with milk and honey. Okay. Was this true? Let's read from Josephus. Josephus is a complicated figure in history. He was a Jew, but he Romanized himself, and he became one of the preeminent Roman historians. And he writes in the Jewish Wars, book 3. So if you ever want to read a 3-part series, go ahead, Josephus, the Jewish Wars. He writes, for the whole area is excellent for crops or pasturage, and rich in trees of every kind, so that by its fertility it invites even those least inclined to work on the land. In fact, every inch of it has been cultivated by the inhabitants, and not a parcel goes to waste. It is thickly covered with towns, and thanks to the natural abundance of the soil, the many villages are so densely populated that the smallest of them has more than 15,000 inhabitants. That sounds like an incredible land. Every bit of it is cultivated. It's just overflowing. So that's the first set of sources, and that's the description of it coming true. But now I'm going to read you some other sources. Leviticus 26:32. So devastated will I leave the land that your very enemies who come to dwell in it will stand aghast at the sight of it. Now, that seems to indicate that the land is going to be horrible. Did that ever come true? So let's read now. We're going to read first from Mark Twain. Mark Twain was a Philo-Semite. He loved the Jews, as we spoke about earlier. But he went on a pilgrimage to Israel in his travels, and he wrote about it in Harper and Brothers magazine. He writes, we traversed some miles of desolate country whose soil is rich enough but is given wholly to weeds, a silent, mournful expanse. A desolation is here that not even imagination can grace with the pomp of life and action. We reached Tabor safely. Tabor is Tveria. We never saw a human being on the whole route. This is Mark Twain describing what he saw. We pressed on toward the goal of our crusade, renowned Jerusalem. The further we went, the hotter the sun got, and the more rocky and bare, repulsive and dreary the landscape became. There was hardly a tree or a shrub anywhere. Even the olive and the cactus, those fast friends of a worthless soil, had almost deserted the country. No landscape exists that is more tiresome to the eye than that which bounds the approaches to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is mournful, dreary, and lifeless. I would not desire to live here. It is a hopeless, dreary, heartbroken land. Palestine sits in sackcloth and ashes. Over it broods the spell of a curse that has withered its fields and fettered its energies. It is desolate and unlovely. Palestine is desolate and unlovely, and why should it be otherwise? Can the curse of the deity beautify the land? God cursed it. He said it would be so devastated that even your enemies will stand aghast. Palestine is no more of this workday world. It is sacred to poetry and tradition. It is a dreamland. So that's a non-Jew traveling to Israel and saying, what's going on? There's nothing here. But let's see a Jewish famous rabbi who went to Israel. Nachmanides, Ramban, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman. He was forced into a debate before the king of Aragon with an apostate, a Jew who left the fold, named himself Pablo Cristiani, and became a confidant of the king. And when the king forced him to have a debate with Nachmanides, Nachmanides won the debate. And the king gave him the prize, which was basically a certain amount of gold. And he said, look, you won the debate fair and square, but now you got to leave the country because you embarrassed my religion. So Nachmanides travels from Spain and goes to Israel. And he writes a letter to his son. Here is part of the letter. May the Lord bless you, my son Nachman. May you see the good of Jerusalem, and may you see your children's children. I am writing to you from Jerusalem, the holy city. What shall I tell you about the land? There are so many forsaken places, and the desolation is great. It comes down to this: the more sacred the place, the more it has suffered. Jerusalem is most desolate, Judea more so than the Galilee. Yet in all its desolation, it is an exceedingly good land. What is going on here? Let's write one more example. Alphonse de Lamartine, a French explorer who travels to Israel in the 1800s. By the way, if you want to also understand part of this whole Arab-Israeli conflict, if you think, what did Israel look like 150 years ago? Mark Twain didn't see a single person from when he landed in the port at Acre all the way to Tiberia. Not a single person. There was almost no one there. We're not talking about a country that was lived on richly by many, many Arabs. There was no one there, pretty much. Look what Alphonse de Lamartine, a French non-Jewish explorer, writes in his book called Recollections of the East. Outside the walls of Jerusalem, however, we saw no living being, heard no living voice. We encountered that desolation and that deadly silence which we would have expected to see at the ruined gates of Pompeii. A total, eternal dread spell envelops the city, the highways, and the villages, the burial grounds of an entire people. This land is empty. And one more, this is from a professor in the 1880s, a British professor. He writes, until today, no people has succeeded in establishing national dominion in the land of Israel. No national unity or spirit of nationalism has acquired any hold there. There's no one there that says this is our land. The mixed multitude of itinerant tribes that managed to settle there did so on lease as temporary residents. It seems that they await the return of the permanent residents of the land. So how do you understand this country? Is it flowing with milk and honey? Is it so rich that every inch of it has been cultivated? Or is it so devastated that even your enemies stand aghast at the sight of it? Which one is it? These are both written in the Torah. So Nachmanides explains it to his son. Look at this. This is Nachmanides back not in his letter to his son. This is Nachmanides on the book of Leviticus, on the verse that God says Israel will be desolate. And we see one after the other, historians, writers, philosophers visiting and saying it's exactly true. Says Nachmanides, similarly, that which he stated here, and your enemies there shall dwell therein, and shall be desolate in it, constitutes a good tiding, proclaiming that during all of our exiles, our land will not accept our enemies. This also is a great proof and assurance to us, for in the whole inhabited part of the world, one cannot find such a good and large land, which was always lived in, and yet is as ruined as it is today. For since the time that we left, it has not accepted any nation or people. They all try to settle, but to no avail. Nachmanides says that God makes an incredible miracle. There is a piece of real estate that is the prime real estate of the world, It is at the nexus of 3 continents. It's where Europe and Asia and Africa all come together. It is the best real estate in the world. And yet, when the Jews are living of it, it gives of itself unbelievably. As Josephus described, every inch of it is cultivated. The soil is so good that even those least inclined to cultivate are farming there because it just gives and gives. And yet, when the Jewish people are gone, God says, I'll do you this favor. I will shut the land down. It will not produce for anybody else, so that nobody should settle it. And the best real estate in the world will lay empty for thousands of years. Thousands of years. And indeed, that came true. There is no country in the world that depends on who's living on it. When its rightful inhabitants are there, it gives of itself unbelievably, and when they're gone, it shuts down for thousands of years. Okay, and now we have the final one. The 7th wonder of Jewish history, the return of the exile to the land of Israel. We spoke earlier in our series about how nations don't get exiled often, but never has a nation come back from exile. The amazingness that we were able to come back from our exile. I don't know if you guys know this part of history. Do you know who was the deciding vote, whether we should be given permission, so to speak? There was a UN partition vote.
Russia.
The deciding vote was the USSR. The USA was still not sure how they were going to vote, and they were probably going to vote no. But the USSR, which came before them, right? Because they spell things differently in the United Nations, it goes by the French. So the USSR, which came before them, voted yes. And America said, we can't have the USSR voting yes. And we say no. So they voted yes. Russia, the country that then turned around and supplied all of our enemies with their weapons for years. All the Arab nations, they were flying MiGs. And their tanks were T-60s and whatever. All the weaponry that the Arabs had in all the wars were all supplied by the Six-Day War, the Yom Kippur War, all supplied by Russia. But yet Russia was the one who gave us our vote. How do you have that? How do you have people who have been scattered across the world for thousands of years come streaming back to the point where today the majority of Jewish people are living in the land of Israel? This is unprecedented, but yet that was also called for. And as a bonus, because you guys deserve a bonus, I said good things would happen today. When the Jewish people return to their land, it has opened itself up and flourished like no one has ever seen. There's been a green revolution in Israel. Now, Israel is a very, very warm and happy and friendly country, and they're happy to teach people. People come from all over the world to Israel to learn. I don't know if you guys know this. Israel has programs where they bring people in, not just, they bring in agricultural people, they bring in all kinds of people to come and learn how we do it. We want to teach the world how to be better. So we literally have programs in Israel where we bring in agricultural experts from all over the world, and we teach them what we've done. Because the desert is blooming in Israel. You've seen it if you've gone to Israel. You've seen in the middle of the desert miles of date trees. Now you could say, well, there's drip irrigation and there's hybrid seeds and all that, but guess what? Israel teaches everybody about drip irrigation and hybrid seeds, and no other nation has experienced this green revolution where the agricultural output of Israel has increased not 700%. 7 times in the last 50 years. They are making the desert bloom. They are producing award-winning wines in soil that nobody ever thought could produce a vine, period. It's unbelievable. But guess what? That's what God told us. Some of my favorite wines, by the way, come from wineries in the area that they call Judea and Samaria. Some people call it the West Bank, unfortunately. Why do they grow vines there? They said this area used to belong to Yehuda, the tribe of Yehuda. And the tribe of Yehuda was given in their blessing that they would have amazing wine. When Jacob blessed the tribes, he said, Judah, you're going to have so much wine. So how could there be no vines here? So they started planting vines. But the soil it's very rocky soil. You know what they discovered? The vines they grow in that area, they don't produce a large amount of yield because it is very rocky and tough soil. But the grapes that do come out of there are unbelievable, and they produce award-winning wines. I always say, do you know why Israeli wines win awards all the time? Because the tasting is blind tasting. If they were seeing all the bottles, this is the Jewish one, they would get like 64s and 72s. But instead, the people who are tasting them, they don't know which wine they're drinking. They get 94s, 98s. They're award-winning wines from areas. But why are they planting it there? Because Yehuda was here, and the Torah says Yehuda's going to have amazing wine. The return of a people from exile, and then the flourishing of the land. Unbelievable. But let me read to you the sources that show this. Let's go back to Deuteronomy. Okay, now by the way, it is 1:01 right now. I have, after this, I'm going to do a little bit of recap too. It'll be about another 10 minutes. You are welcome to leave. Do not worry. Do not feel bad. I understand I'm overstaying, but I also want to treat you guys to this incredible ending because it's amazing. So if you want to stay, you could stay. If you want to go, you can go. You can catch it later on Torah Anytime. Okay, boom. Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Deuteronomy 30, verses 3 through 5. The Lord your God shall turn your captivity and have compassion upon you. And he will return and gather you from all the nations amongst whom the Lord your God has scattered you. If your outcasts be at the utmost parts of heaven, from there the Lord will gather you, and from there he will fetch you, and the Lord your God will bring you into the land which your fathers possessed, and you will possess it. And he will do you good and multiply you more than your fathers. Ezekiel 36, 8 through 11. Not only will Hashem bring us back, but the land itself will start to flourish again. Here's the verses from Ezekiel. As for you, O mountains of Israel, you shall shoot forth your branches and bear your fruit for my people Israel, for their return is close at hand. For behold, I am with you, and I shall turn to you, and you shall be tilled and sown, and I will multiply men upon you, the entire family of Israel. Then I will multiply men and animals upon you, and they shall increase and be fruitful. I shall cause you to be inhabited as you were in your former times, and I will make you even more bountiful than you were in your beginnings. You shall know that I am God. When you see the Jewish people coming back and the land becoming bountiful again, you will know that I am God. But throughout our history, our sages have always told us that one of the greatest signs that Mashiach is almost here will be when the land of Israel once again starts to produce in great abundance. I'm reading to you now from Rashi. Rashi lived in France from the year 1040 to 1105. When he died, the return of the exile was not even a dream or a twinkle in someone's eyes. And Rashi writes, when the land of Israel will yield its produce in superabundance, this will signal the end of the exile. There is no clearer end than this. The Maharsha, Rabbi Shmuel Eliezer Adels, who lived from 1555 to 1631, in Prague, I believe, or Krakow. He writes, as long as Israel does not dwell in its land, the land does not give of her produce as she is accustomed, like we explained. When she will begin to reflourish, however, and give of her fruits in abundance, this is a clear sign that the time of the redemption is approaching, when all of Israel will return to their land. Ladies and gentlemen, we're there. We are at the end of the story, okay? There's no question about it. Let's review the 7 remarkable things that our Scripture wrote out for us. Remember, every other nation, every other holy book tells you what will happen in the world to come, which can't be proven. But our book tells you exactly what will happen here and tells you things that happen, we'll see in a moment, to no one else. Or very, very small percentages, and they've all come true. And that's how we know. If you want to answer the guy in the plane, if you remember the first part where the guy sits down next to you on the plane and he asks you, how do you guys know you're right? This is the answer. The best answer is I don't want to talk about it. My mother said don't talk about politics and religion with strangers. But if you do want to get, here is your answer. So let's look at the 7 things that the Torah said, the history book that was written before history, what did it say was going to happen? Number 1, it said that we were going to be an eternal nation. As we did the numbers, 99.9% of nations have died out. We are still here. And not only that, we're still doing what he said we'd be doing. So 0.1% of peoples have this, 99.9 don't. Number 2, being exiled twice. How many peoples have that happened to? 0. But it was written in the book and it happened to us. The level of hatred and animosity. How many other nations have faced the level of hatred and animosity and violence against us throughout the ages? 0. But it happened to us. Small in number. The same book that said that we were going to be going through all these difficulties said we would always be small in number. And we've never experienced a population explosion like every other great society. How many societies has that happened to? 0. Light unto the nations. How many nations have had the effect on the world that the Jews have on the world? 0. Land that is dependent on who's living in it, this chameleon land that could either be the most bountiful or the most desolate. How many other places have that land, that insanely miraculous land? 0. Return from exile and re-flourishing of the land. How many people have had that happen to them? 0. And that's how I know that we are God's chosen people. It doesn't mean we can go party and say, I'm better than you. No, it means that we have a tremendous responsibility upon our head to light up the world, to bring kindness and godliness, tolerance and love and giving and selflessness and sanctity and purity and holiness and beauty and joy to the world. But what happens if someone says, well, maybe they just got lucky? Okay, they just got lucky. Let me respond to that. If you've ever been to Vegas, you will know that there's on-strip casinos and there's off-strip casinos. The casinos on the Vegas Strip, on Las Vegas Boulevard, are the biggest names, the most expensive ones. They spend sometimes $1 billion to build them out. And that's where, you don't get the best casino experience if you're looking to spend a few dollars, whatever it is. It's a lot of scrutiny. Blackjack tables, you can't find a table under a $25 limit on a weekend. Then you have the off-strip ones, where the old Vegas used to be, the Golden Nugget, the Golden Saloon or whatever it is. And they're not where most people are, but they have to make it attractive, so they give a little bit better odds. They give better odds on various things. You could win more. There's extra little bonuses, all kinds of little ways to make a little extra money, and that's where people who might be a little bit more thrifty might go. Okay. Now, if you've ever been to a casino, you would know that the most electric place in any casino is where? And do not say the slot machines. That's where, that's the death of the casino. I mean, that's literally where just people are sitting there, glazed over eyes. Not blackjack. Not the shows. No. I'm talking about casinos over here. The craps tables. There we go. Okay, good. We got at least one degenerate gambler here. No, God forbid. The craps tables, where fortunes are made and lost in very short period of times. Okay, so imagine the following scenario. It's a Saturday night at the Golden Saloon, or the Golden Nugget, in the off-strip, where they give better odds. So, this man dressed in a silver sharkskin suit and an iridescent purple shirt with his collar open, a couple buttons, and his collar flowing above his suit, walks on up to the craps table and has a spot and drops $100 on the table and says, please give me black. Now, if you know the way it works, the chips by color, the greens are $25, the reds are $5, the black ones are worth $100. So no one really, when you go to the craps table, you probably want to play a little bit of this, a little bit. No, just one. He just wants one black chip. Okay, they give it to him. And the way it works is if you've got money at the table, you can wait your turn as long as you want until it's your turn, and it'll be your turn to shoot the dice. Okay? So, finally it becomes his turn. Now the craps table, it's a very complicated game, craps. There's many bets that are one-time bets. There are bets that are multiple rolls. There are odds behind the bets. There's all kinds of stuff going on. You need like a math major to be able to figure out the craps table. But there's a very simple bet. It's called snake eyes. Snake eyes means 2 ones. You're shooting 2 dice and getting 2 ones. Now, does anybody here know the odds of getting 2 ones on a single roll?
1 out of 36.
1 out of 36. Very good. So what does the casino pay you if you get it right? Well, on the strip, they pay you 30 to 1, right? Because they could take a big fat cut. You're going to come to the nice casinos anyway. But off strip, they got to try to attract the people, so they give them 35 to 1 odds. They still need a little bit of an edge. They're not giving you 36 to 1 because then it'll just be there's no edge. But so the odds of getting is 1 to 36. They'll pay you 1 to 35. Okay. So this guy, he takes his black when it's his turn to shoot, and he flips it up, cavalier move, and says, snake eyes. Now the people behind the table, they explain to him, like, sir, I don't know if you know this. This is a one-time bet, right? Like, if you don't get snake eyes on this next roll, you're done. He's like, yeah, I know. Okay. The croupier, the guy who's standing there with the little tuxedo and all that, he takes his little wooden hockey stick, and he shoves 5 dice over to this man, and you get to pick 2 of the 5 dice. So he shapes out the 2 dice on the table, and he shapes them into the shapes of snake eyes, and then he picks them up in his hand, and he makes a little prayer, blows on his hand, shoots the die down the table. They hit the back wall. They come back, and oh yeah, snake eyes. That's amazing. What did he just get? $3,500. Oh my gosh! But then he says 3 words that he should never ever be saying at a casino, and especially not when you're betting snake eyes. He says, "Let it ride." Let it ride. It means you want to leave all your winnings on the table on your next roll? Are you out of your mind? You just came in with $100. You won $3,500. Take your money and run. You got to know when to hold them, when to fold them. But he says, no. Let it ride. Okay. At this point, people start gathering around from the casino. I mean, this is crazy. This guy's got crazy luck. Okay. The croupier takes his little hockey stick, shoves 5 red dice over to the man, and the man shapes out snake eyes. He picks them up in his hand. He rocks back on his back leg. He makes a little prayer, blows on his hand for good luck, shoots the die down the table. They hit the back wall. They come back, and oh my gosh, he got snake eyes again. The place is going crazy. How much did he win now? No, he had $3,500. And he did that times 35. It's about $114,000? $122,500. This guy came in with a single $100 bill, and he is now the proud owner of $122,500 minus whatever Uncle Sam will take. And then he says 3 words. Now, you should never say in a casino, and definitely not when you're already on such a streak. He says, "Let it ride." And at this point, everyone at the table is like, "What?" And now that they got to check with the eyes in the sky. They got to check. The pit boss is standing there, right? The pit boss is the guy who's like in charge of watching. But they got to check if they're going to clear him to even make this bet. The casinos can control whether you can bet it or not. So you see the pit boss. He's like talking to the people upstairs, and they're watching. Of course, by now this is a pretty significant event in the casino. At this point, by the way, like there's no one playing blackjack. Everyone's drifting over to watch this. Even, you want to know how crazy it is? Even the people at the slot machines are leaving their slot machine, which you never leave your slot machine because you've got a system. And if you leave in middle, you're messing up your whole system. You're not going to make your big payout. How are you going to pay the bills? So, but even the people at the slot machines are leaving to come see what's happening. And they got the people, the eyes in the sky are watching. They say, "You're cleared." So the pit boss says, "Okay, go ahead." So now he's betting $122,500 on snake eyes, and the music starts. Okay, here we go, right on time. All right, we're gonna wait. The whole place is waiting. The whole casino's there. Okay, the croupier takes his little wooden hockey stick and shoves 5 red die over to the man. The man takes 2 die on the table, shapes them out into the shape of snake eyes, picks them up on his hand, rocks back on his back feet, and at this point, you could hear a pin drop. The casino is mesmerized. Everybody is watching. This guy came in with $100. He's now the proud owner of $122,500, and he's betting it all for the chance to become a multi-millionaire in one more roll of the die. He takes it, he's holding, he's praying, he's blowing for the good luck, he's blowing on his hand, and he's sweating, and everybody's sweating, and he shoots the die down the table. They hit the back wall, and they come back, and snake eyes! The whole place is going crazy, but then, while the whole casino is screaming and cheering and clapping, there are doors all over the casino. And out of those doors come a bunch of really big guys wearing ill-fitting suits with little earpieces. And they converge on the table, and they literally grab him, and they start dragging him away from the table. And he's like, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" And like, "Nothing." And they drag him upstairs to the room, the eyes in the sky. And they sit him down in a chair, and they're like, "Listen, man, we're not the casinos on the strip over here. We do things old school. You either tell us how you were cheating, or you're going to face a little bit of a beatdown. And they've already got a rolled up telephone book, because that leaves not so much marks. I'm not trying to give you guys any advice, but just saying. So they say to him, how did you cheat? He's like, I didn't cheat, I promise you. I just got lucky. He's like, no. How did you cheat? How did you do it? We were watching you. We were watching you from the sky since the second roll already. What are you doing? How are you cheating? How are you controlling? Did you switch out the dice? What did you do? He's like, I promise you, I didn't cheat. I just got lucky. And the head of security looks at him and says, are you a fool? You can get lucky once. You can get lucky twice. No one gets lucky 3 times. You must be controlling this somehow. So I just showed you 7 ways that the Jewish people experienced things that were profoundly prophesied in our book, things that don't happen to everybody else, and yet they all come true exactly with us. And you're going to say, maybe we got lucky? And I'll say to you, listen, buddy, I don't know if you know how this works. You can get lucky once. You can get lucky twice. But 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, 7 times, you're not getting lucky. Someone is controlling it. And that's why I believe that God, who I believe wrote our Torah, had not only knowledge of all of history, but control of all of history. And we clearly are his chosen people. Thank you for coming, thank you for listening, and thank you for being awesome.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.